Celeb Savant is a career retrospective type interview focusing on singers, actors, and industry experts. Join Barrett Edelstein now as he dives into the entertainment world.
Formed in 1985, British band Swing Out Sister comprised of Corinne Drewery on vocals, Andy Connell on keyboards, and original drummer Martin Jackson. Their elegant blend of pop, jazz, and cinematic soul won them legions of fans and critical acclaim throughout the 1980s and beyond. Their hits include, amongst others, Breakout, Surrender, You On My Mind, Twilight World, Waiting Game, and a remake of the Eugene Records soul composition, Am I the Same Girl? Their first singles and albums were chart successes both in the UK and the USA. The band was subsequently nominated for 2 Grammy Awards in 1988 for Best New Artist and Best Pop Vocal Performance by a Duo or Group for their single Breakout. Drummer Martin Jackson left the group during the recording of their second album, and the band continued as a duo with Corinne and Andy. Their album releases are as follows: It's Better to Travel, 1985. Kaleidoscope World, 1989. Get in Touch with Yourself, 1992. The Living Return, 1994. Shapes and Patterns, 1997. Filth and Dreams, 1999. Somewhere Deep in the Night, 2001. Where Our Love Grows, 2004. Beautiful Mess, 2008. Private View, 2012. Almost Persuaded, 2017. Swing Out Sister are currently recording a new big band album which will be coming out shortly. Up next on Celeb Savant, we've got Corinne Drewery and Andy Connell from Swing Out Sister.
Corinne, first, where in the world are you and how are you doing?
We are in London and I'm doing fine, thanks.
Andy, also obviously in London.
I'm in London and I have to say I'm doing fine.
Corinne, first, at what age, whether as a child or teenager, did you feel I want to be in this creative world? How did you meet with Andy and how did the band come to be?
I'd wanted to be in a band since I was about 5 years old. I wanted to be Dusty Springfield, Petula Clark, Sandy Shaw, Dionne Warwick, all of the Supremes and Diana Ross. But then fast forward to my teens, the Jacksons and Motown and David Bowie, Mark Bolan, Slade, they all had a big impact on me as well. And so when I went to St Martin's School of Art, I joined a band as well as studying fashion and textiles. Left, got a job in fashion. Well, I worked for myself for a while, got a job in fashion, and then wanted to return to singing. So I pestered Andy. I fell over Andy in my flat living room because his manager lived in our flat and they were coming to sort out some record deal or other. And so then I started pestering them. Can I sing with you? Can I sing it? No, you're not a singer. I was going, well, I've done a bit of singing. You know, I kind of forced myself upon them, really.
Andy, your journey, so up to the point of being part of the band, what was your experience as a teenager, as a child?
I was always very jealous of, people who have musical households when they were growing up and they'd be playing interesting records and musicians would come around. And every time I went to see, there was a particular friend of mine and I went to see them and they had this kind of bohemian, they had parents who, kind of just were into poetry and art and all these. And I thought, oh, that's not what goes on at home. The first album I ever had that I bought with my own money was Mark Bolan, was T-Rex album. And I used to do that thing. I bet Corinne did as well, where I would put the album there on the basis that maybe T-Rex might be touring and they might break down and have to come in for a cup of tea and they would see their album and they'd be really pleased about it. So it was that kind of, we were all enthralled by that, weren't we? The sort of glam rock thing. But really mine was a lot more, how would you put it? I went sideways a little bit. I got into jazz and various things and just things off the bit. I liked being off the beaten track a little bit. And so when we got together, it was very hard to find a common ground between the three of us. There was 3 of us at the time. And we all had such disparate interests. And I think that actually, in hindsight, was a very good thing because Corinne and I and the producer and Martin, we couldn't find a common area of, where we wanted to be. And I think the thing that tied it all in was John Barry in the end for us. The soundtracks of John, not just the soundtracks even, but the records they made with great singers. And so that was the common ground we had, because that, again, like we were saying about glam rock, that was such an evocative thing, that sound of John Barry, the James Bond films and all that soundtrack stuff. So, that was me. That was how we made sense of it.
How did the name Swing Out Sister come to be?
Well, we couldn't decide upon a name. There were three of us in the band and a record company waiting to put a record out. And we had so many disputes and disagreements about what we should be called. Obviously, we didn't like the same kind of music. We didn't really know each other that well. We came up with all sorts of ridiculous, no, that's not going to work. No, we don't want that. And then our record company that we just signed a 2 singles deal with, and they're waiting to put out the first single, said, well, you can't put anything out until you have a name. So if you don't have a name, we're going to drop you. And we were sitting in their office in the record company, and there was a Halliwell's film directory. So I said, okay, whichever page it flips open at, that's what it will be. And what was it? Swing Out Sister. We all hated it, so we agreed on one thing. So we didn't like.
They were unanimous.
Have you learned to like the name over time?
No, not really. I wonder if any band ends up liking their name. There's such strange things, aren't they, band names? Like the Police. What's that? The problem we had when we were going around America the first few times, people would meet us at the airport to go and do wherever the gig was. And the driver would say, okay, so where are the sisters? You became Swing Out Sisters. So I think they were expecting a kind of female, vocal group of some sort. So it's been variously. It's a neutral kind of name. I think that's to its credit. But no, I don't think we've ever loved it as a band name.
So you referenced earlier that you were struggling to find common ground. At what point did you guys realize that John Barry was that commonality?
I'm not sure. I think probably we heard a song on the radio. Maybe it would have been probably something with Shirley Bassey or Nancy Sinatra, one of the themes. And I would have said, oh God, I love Shirley Bassey. If only we could write a Bond theme, which I know everyone says now, but I think at that time, it wasn't really the kind of music people wanted to make. It was a bit too dramatic. It was coming out of punk and post-industrial funk, and then it was a little bit more synth pop. So the Bond themes weren't that. It was kind of a bit more traditional. But I loved Shirley Bassey. Then it turned out Andy absolutely adored John Barry and all the scores and the instrumentation as well. And we'd all grown up with Bond films, haven't we?
I think it's easy to forget, generationally, how significant a Bond film was for us, for our generation. Now it's a bit of fun and whatever, there's 1,000 other things. But at the time, a new Bond movie, when we were kids, you'd drag your mom to, can we go and see it? And it was a big event. And the music matched the size of the event. Those scores are just monumental. And also, I think the weird thing for me was that in hindsight, the music soundtrack is so much better than the movie. Because they seem cool because John Barry brings something to it. So that was a good learning experience to find out that the power of the music could, because we've always been interested in visuals, music with visuals, and I hesitate to say, people say there's a cinematic quality to what we do, but I think it's because we see it. We don't really write songs; we write moods of things with some lyrics stuck on the top. So that was it was a good place to be. The great thing of him in that era was we can all take our own particular bits from it. Like we were saying, Corinne can take Shirley Bassey or Nancy Sinatra. I can take Sean Connery. We can all have our own little moments of John Barry-ness.
Take the exception to Andy's, sorry to interrupt, but the comment of, we just made some music with some lyrics stuck on the top, thanks. I spend a long time crafting the lyrics, the work. Andy always says, you never write the lyrics first, which I don't, because I wait for Andy's masterpieces. And then I craft the lyrics around the feelings and emotions that Andy's chords and arrangements conjure up.
How about this? They're fabulous lyrics with some music stuck on the bottom.
Well, I wouldn't say that either. As you can see, we're quite contradictory.
Yes.
That's kind of what makes the music work, because Andy's created a beautiful symphony of melancholy. I'll sing happy lyrics. And if he's made something very mournful and sad, I'll sing happy lyrics as well. And if I write sad lyrics, he writes happy music. We contradict all the time, but that kind of tension sometimes brings a little something else.
Absolutely. And just going back before moving forward to the James Bond, with every movie, I suppose more then and, the 80s, 90s, 2000s than now, because it's getting a bit saturated. It's always like, who's singing the theme song, or, the excitement of that announcement of who that artist will be. So I think it's dissipated these days, but I definitely lost up until the last 30 years. Anyway, so you guys got together, you found the commonality of John Barry, and then you moved into Swing Out Sister. Were you surprised by the success that you guys had, or was it just foundations that you built that moved into the next steps of that success?
Oh, we were constantly surprised. I don't think any of us were going into with the idea that there would be a career, that we would be doing this. There was no kind of master plan. It was just, what's the next thing we could do? And maybe there's be another thing after that, possibly. But when that single took off, it was a complete shock to all of us. And the record company, actually. They were kind of, we had a 2-single deal, and that was the second single. Breakout was the second single. Yep. And we were effectively, they were saying, we're not going to pick up an option. This is the end of our relationship in a nice way. But so we were thinking, okay, we'll shop around and we'll see what else we can do. And of course, then they had to put it out. So they took it to the radio and they played it on the radio. And of course, immediately on the radio, something happened. Some frequency thing happened and everybody just immediately kind of thought, oh, it was one of those things that radio is such a weird phenomenon. You can have something at home and until you hear it on the radio, you don't know if it's got that magic thing.
Yes.
And it just lit up on the radio. It was so the whole thing was, from that point on, was chaos because we didn't have an album ready to go. So everything was see the pen, stay up all night trying to get something together. And it felt like that for the whole year after that, really. Everything was just tumbling along in a chaotic, it was lovely. It was exciting, but there was no scheme involved.
Corinne, with the pace of everything that happened after the success of that song, did you guys ever have a moment of time to take it all in, or was it just like a roller coaster?
It was like a roller coaster for about 3 years, and I think most bands have this. Everything's condensed into 3, and then things calm down a bit, and then you start thinking, is this it? What did we do wrong? So I think when everything's happening so fast, it would have been nice if we could have stretched it out a little bit so we had a little bit of time to reflect on it. But I think you have to work so hard once you have some success, and if you want to maintain that success and you have a record company behind you and press and people following you, you really need to make the most of it while you can. And we probably didn't appreciate at the time how lucky we are. After a few months, it's like, oh, well, this is kind of what happens. This is what everybody has. I don't think we realize it was very special, and we were very lucky to have a hit single, our second single, and a number 1 record, all within the space of a year. It was like, whoa, we pulled it off.
Andy, and then to Corinne, you guys still creating after all this period of time. What motivates you to keep creating music and putting it out there?
That's a tough question, really. I mean, because I think it changes. It gradually changes without you noticing. I think it's easy to be motivated in the early days because there's all manner of, that youthful thing where you want to get somewhere in the world, you want to be recognized in some way. It's a human thing. And once that happened, once it was kind of, even for that period of time that Corinne's talking about, the world kind of says yes. And you relax a bit because it's that thing is lifted, the idea of I've got to try and achieve something, because you think in whatever small way that is, you have done that. And the bit after that is a good question. I don't know where the motivation comes from after that, but it's just the sense of, I think you have to have something in yourself that you do it for. You have to think this means something to me as opposed to somebody else. And I think you stop writing for a potential audience. You write very much for yourself or maybe one or two people who you respect. But there's a sense that you just want to do the thing as well as you can do it. And that sounds quite banal, but it's kept us going. And also stubbornness. I think there's a basic. We both are basically very stubborn people, and that's essential, I think, in doing this, especially when you're kind of, as we have been in, certainly with this box set, as you're out of the limelight, you're not getting much feedback, you're not getting much kind of positive reaction to what you do, and so you have to have that kind of pig-headedness in yourself that says this is worth something. That's basically it.
And for you, Corinne, anything to add?
I think the motivation is the inspiration, and that can come from many places. But I think we're sort of off the roller coaster, so it's nice to have some space in between. But inspiration can come from so many more places, and we're constantly looking further for different inspiration because we've been inspired by lots of things already. But then suddenly something will come along, and it's like, whoa. That makes me feel like writing some words or a song. But I think most of all, it's coming together with people. So it's coming together with the band that we work with live and some of the people who listen to our music, who really keep egging us on and go, are you going to do any more concerts? Are you going to do this? And it's kind of, it gets tougher getting a band together and going on tour, especially with all the stuff that's going on in the world right now. It seems to make it more difficult to move around. We've had a period of time when we had a golden era of music and of being able to share our music with people, being able to just move around and share it. And I think it does get more difficult, but you just don't have to think about it. I think you just have to get on and do it, because you have to stop and remember, why do we make this music in the first place? Because it makes us happy. And it makes other people happy most of the time. So just keep doing it.
Andy, you referenced the box set. Tell us more.
It's the second box set. And I think the intriguing thing from my point of view with this one is it's very much, the first one had, for want of a better word, hit singles. And there was a certain kind of attention went towards that one. And there's a certain kind of person who would be interested in that one. I think this one is very much more of an enthusiast's collection. In the sense that, you have to have followed, I don't think you have to have followed what we've been doing, but certainly you'd have to be interested enough to get the most out of these, because I think they're, as we were saying, we've wandered from the herd a little bit over those years. So, it's very much more a sort of a connoisseur's album, let's say, or a collection of albums. But the great thing from my point of view is that they've been, because of the way our career unfolded, we were with different companies in different territories, and lots of releases didn't happen globally. So, Filth and Dreams was only released in Japan. Shapes and Patterns was only released in America. So it's a kind of coming together of all of the various things that were spread around the world in one box. So from our point of view, it's what's that phrase they say with the loan company? We've consolidated all our albums into one manageable box. It's very nice to have that. We can't keep track of all of the various things we've done. So to have them in one place has been and Cherry Red have done such a great job with the first one and this one. They've really, it's a real labor of love, I think, from them. They're not just doing it for the sake of it. So it's been a great experience. And as much as anything, it's been nice for us to soak ourselves in that period of time again, and remember, because we've been saying this before, it's a visual, music is a diary, it's a sonic diary, isn't it? People remember your first kiss, what record was playing or whatever. So for us, it's a diary of what we were doing with our own music. And it's been very emotional listening to it all.
Corinne, anything to add?
No, I don't think so. I think it is echoing really what Andy says. It's so nice to hear a body of work in one place, because all of our records, we give them away to people, we listen to them, we leave them on the tour bus, we leave them at people's. I don't think we've got a lot of these. It's taken a lot of work to round all of this up, and also some of the. It's quite nice to be able to share this with people because some of these albums, one of them only came out in America. That's Shapes and Patterns. Filth and Dreams only came out in Japan, and also The Big Elsewhere only came out in Japan. And then Somewhere Deep in the Night and Where Our Love Grows weren't that widely known. The Living Return, they're all a little bit under the radar. So to have this body of work all together and for us to listen to it and think, did we really do all of that? Kind of, while no one was watching, we weren't really being pushed to do it.
Sometimes we were being pushed not to do it.
So how does it work when a release is only released in, I know it's different now with the streaming, but we'll get into that in a moment. But back in the day, was it the records label's decision to say, okay, this is going to Japan, this is going to America? Did you guys have any input into that? Well, how does that work?
No, we had no input. I mean, and it's really a case of, the UK, because of, let's say, the UK tends to be, for example, Japan is a lot more loyal in terms of the audience stays longer with the artist generally. The nature of the UK industry is a little bit more fly by night, and it's hard to have longevity here. And America is its own thing again, so it's really at the mercy of the UK. Would probably tired of us after 2 or 3 albums and thought, whatever. Japan was still positive. America was, they weren't sure, but they could be convinced. And so it's a concept. We have no say in any of it. We have no, we don't have no power in terms of what's released where. We're just very happy when somebody decides they want to. So it has been a journey of, ups and downs and peaks and troughs and, little clusters of support and various clusters of get lost. And so like we was already said, it's nice to have all the kind of things tied up a little bit and in one place.
I love me a CD. I still budget for my CDs every month. For me, it's an energy exchange to say thank you to you guys for all the hard work in your creative process. I'm not sure if you are or not aware, vinyl, CDs, cassettes, and massive comebacks around the world. The year before last in the UK, 5.9 million vinyls sold, the biggest since 1990. Also last year in the UK, there's a basket of products that they gauge exchanges on. And there needs to be a certain amount of exchanges, high exchanges every day for a product to be in this basket, and they gauge it for some other tax purposes. And because of the upsurge of CDs again, CDs are now back in that basket. And the research is actually showing that it's the teenagers, the younger people that are diving into this world, and not necessarily the older nostalgic people. Then we also have these streaming platforms that people consume music on. Corinne, what are your observations of the landscape at the moment?
It's difficult to know, really. I mean, I can go by what I personally do and my peers do. And, we are very much in the mature vintage category demographic. But I think maybe people like me have been through the whole vinyl phase. Some people have got rid of all of their vinyl and started buying it again. Some people have hung on to it, like myself. And so we got shelves and shelves of the stuff. Got rid of the record player, well, it broke. So now I've had to buy a new record player and turntable. So that's given the vinyl a little bit of a new lease of life. But then it's so much easier to just find something online rather than go through hundreds of records and think, where did I put that? If I got round to filing them all, which might take a few months, then with the CDs, I think people of our age, I bought a car because it had a CD player in it. It wasn't the best model, but it had a CD player because I've got so many CDs, and it's the collection of songs as you know it. I think that's probably one of the reasons people around my age return to those things, because you can go and find stuff online. They're remastered, they're reworked, they're re-recorded. They're not the right versions. And unless you know, people who might say, oh, play Marvin Gaye, Let's Get It On. Unless you know what the original of that sounded like, it could be somebody's remix, it could be a re-record. The streaming platforms will sneakily push something else at you till you go, no, not that one, no. And then you may find it if you're lucky. But I think on CDs and vinyl, you have the music as you originally heard it in that collection. If you're talking about the old CDs and vinyl, but I think younger people, it's a bit of a novelty to them, and they're kind of being part of this retro world that they've heard about, and having physical stuff I think when there's so much stuff online, it's hard to remember where it was and where you had it. If you've got the physical, then you know you've got it, it's there, and you know what it looks like. I think you can treasure it a little bit more. Although somebody told me, maybe it was you, Andy, that we were having a conversation that quite a lot of kids buy the vinyl just for the sleeves to stick on their wall. They haven't even got a record player.
Well, this is it. The sales of vinyl far outstrip sales of turntables.
Andy, anything to add?
I hesitate. Are you an enthusiast of the physical format then, as opposed to streaming? Is it?
Yes, I much prefer the physical for the simple reason I like the aesthetic of the journey, the choice, the unpacking, the listening to song from 1 to whatever number.
Yeah.
So,
no, I'd agree with that.
Also, I find the sound quality is much better on the physical than a couple of years ago. So I was living overseas. I came back to South Africa, and a couple of years ago, I wanted to get my CD player again. And everyone was saying, "Oh, there's no way you're going to find CD players anywhere. They don't make them." And I went onto a platform in South Africa called Takealot, which is similar to Amazon but slightly different. And I was hoping for one option, and they had 50 to 100 options. I had to narrow it down and narrow it down again. And when I got the CD player, to listen to the actual song on the CD compared to the same thing on the Bluetooth with the streaming, the sound quality is like completely different, and is like being engulfed by sound, like a hug of sound compared to the streamer. It feels flat and diluted.
Yeah, no, I would agree from that point of view. I mean, for us, I think our first album, there was the Dire Straits, because we were on Phonogram at the time, Polygram, and Dire Straits Brothers in Arms, which was the test bed for CDs, came out, and ours was around about the same time. So we were very much involved in that kind of in the advent of the CD and the beginnings of vinyl taking a bit of a downturn. And at the time, there were lots and lots of fans of vinyl saying, "Well, the audio quality is not as good as vinyl," and all the rest of it. But I was very happy. I was really very happy with CDs because I treated my vinyl so badly. I didn't do the thing and put it back in the slit. So all my vinyl was ruined. I was completely happy with CDs. Having said that, I do think we have to face a world now where streaming has won. There's no debating that. It's not going to come back full circle. I don't think it's. I think it will be the CD thing and the vinyl thing will remain for enthusiasts and for collectors, and that's great. It's going from strength to strength in its own world, but it will never. The streaming has eaten its lunch, really. I agree with Corinne. The thing. Some of our favorite albums. The thing where a track would finish, and you could, before the next one came on, you already could hear it in your head, the frequencies of it, because you're so familiar with it. You know the running order of the album, and you can sing the thing before it comes in. And I do like that, and I miss that in the streaming world. But I tell you, in the streaming world, what I do like, YouTube. I love YouTube. None of the others are kind of, okay, they're convenient, but there's something about YouTube that for me feels very similar to the early days of transistor radios and God knows what's coming up next. You know what radio used to be, certainly in England? There was no format. I have the example of when I was in the car with my parents and there was the Hawkwind was on and then the Carpenters was on immediately after.
Yeah.
So it was kind of the antithesis of, if you like that, you like this. It was really more, if you like this, there's no reason you shouldn't like this as well. It was a healthier place to be. And I get that with YouTube now. It's like I put something on and then something will follow it, or it might be a documentary about, volcanoes or something, or yes. It might be, you're always surprised what comes next. And I do like that. I think there's not enough of that in the world, just because we always get what the algorithm thinks we want next. Yeah. And I think YouTube is so chaotic. It reminds me of when I was young, I don't know what's coming next. I do enjoy that.
But actually, sometimes I think DJ algorithm can do quite a good job. It does actually surprise me. And I don't want to like it. I just think I want to choose my own stuff and I don't want you trying to read my mind. It makes me annoyed.
Yes.
But if you do ask Siri or somebody, some such thing, for a record and you go, no, not that one, this one, no. And they eventually find the right version, the right artist, the right song. Then, if you leave it running, they come up with some really nice surprise. Sometimes they do the complete antithesis of what you would want to hear next. But sometimes it's like, wow, I haven't heard that for ages. And I think that does the same thing as the randomness of radio. You know, it can do that as well. But then I think it tries to read your mind too much and go your way. I think it just sometimes, if the algorithm setting isn't too severe, it can come up with some really interesting stuff. But it has to be acute as well. It has to know what you like. But then, going to throw this one, and it's like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that one, but that's a really good choice.
What's coming up over the next couple of months? The box set's being released. What else is happening?
Well, we're looking at doing some gigs. We're going to have to, I think next year is 40 years. Imagine this, 40 years since the release of Breakout. We'll be touring in some form or another. And I think we've got a period of time now to kind of work out how that's going to happen, you know, what we should do. So there'll be lots of, I would think, sitting in a room with a few people hacking away at songs that we can't remember very well. But we've had the idea that we would do, given this box set and we're listening to all of the material that we generally don't listen to, it struck us that there's an awful lot of songs there that we've never performed live. So it might be time to, you know, do the ones that never get to see the light of day. That might be an interesting excursion.
So look forward to that. So Corinne, the podcast is listened to throughout the world. As a final message to the audience, what would you like to say?
Wow, throughout the world, that's a difficult one. I think we'd first of all like to say it's amazing that we have this space to share our music with everyone throughout the world, because as you know, this current time is not an easy one. We don't want to get into all that stuff, but if music can still be heard around the world, then that's a good place to be. And I think we can all use music to make us feel good and to help us face whatever we have to face. So yeah, I am so happy that you're sharing your thoughts and opinions with us and allowing us to share our music with everyone.
Thank you. Andy, anything to add?
I have when people used to ask us that, particularly in Japan, I have a thing that doesn't translate well into Japanese, and basically, it's nice to be important, but it's much more important to be nice, which if you ever speak to a Japanese person, that's impossible to translate. So I'm going to leave it there.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Celeb Savant. Please follow Barrett on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Celeb Savant. That's CelebSavant.